Right, good morning ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. I am Councillor Caroline Karimi Govanlu and I will be chairing the planning meeting today. On the top table today are Jane Fox, Case Officer, Chris Watts, Area Planning Manager, Tracy Lincoln, Development Manager, Councillor Eleanor Lamming, Vice Chair, and Leah Arthurton, Democratic Services. We are not expecting a fire drill today, but if the alarm does sound, the fire exits are clearly signed in green. This meeting is being live streamed. Members of the public are welcome to film proceedings as long as they are not disruptive to the conduct of the meeting. If anyone wishes to record this meeting, please identify yourselves now. Thank you. Please can you ensure all mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent. Councillors, please do not use your mobile phones whilst the committee is in session. We will have comfort breaks at various times throughout the meeting. If you must use your phone, then please leave the room. However, you will appreciate that this could result in you not being able to vote on the matter under discussion at the time you leave the room. The order of business is as set out on the agenda. Members of the public can only speak if prior arrangements have been made in accordance with the Council's scheme of public speaking. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker, Parish Council, with a maximum of 15 minutes per category. Only people who have registered to speak will be able to address the committee. The order will be as follows. The planning officer will present the application. Public speakers will then be asked to present their case, followed by questions from members of the committee to clarify something the speaker has said, and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The order of public speaking is Parish Town Council first, followed by objectors and finally supporters, e.g. the applicant or the agent. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker. This will be followed by questions from members of the committee. Again, these questions will only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The committee will then discuss and determine the application. Finally, there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents, photographs, etc. at the meeting. Are there any questions before I open the meeting? Thank you. We will go to the officer, please, who will present. Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Apologies, Chair. Can we do declarations of interest and...
Oh, sorry, yes.
As well, sorry.
Yes. Anybody have any declarations of interest? No. And apologies?
We received apologies from absence from Councillor Orber, with Councillor Catchpole appointed substitute, and Councillor Baby and Councillor Tipple.
Thank you very much. Chris, if you'd like to present, please.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. So this application is seeking full planning permission to demolish an existing petrol station and to replace it with a new canopy, pumps, 2 new underground fuel tanks. The scheme also includes conversion of an MOT bay to a shop. So turning to an aerial view of the site. So the site itself is located in the village of Lenwade, which is off the Fakenham Road. You can see at the top of my screen here. It is within the development boundary for the village. It should be noted that the southern boundary of the site over here is adjacent to a Grade 2 listed building, and this is known as Gothic House. You can see that on my screen here. And the site is also approximately 100 metres from the River Wensum, which is designated as a site of special scientific interest. So the existing garage, you see here on the screen, has been in place for some time, apart from the canopy over the petrol pumps and extensions to the kiosks. In terms of other features, there have been no general updates to the site for some time. I'll just give you a little bit of site context by running through some photos. So this is a view looking east along Fakenham Road towards the petrol station. So you can just see the canopy here in the distance. This white building here is the MOT station, and the kiosk just sits below the canopy in the background. So there's another closer up view of the site itself. A view now looking west along Fakenham Road towards the petrol filling station. This photo is taken from the west, looking from the street, which is the back of the site. So the site starts here, approximately where my cursor is. There's a further view looking along the street, and you can just see the back of the MOT bay and garage. Another view looking along the street. Also note there's a hard standing here currently, which also forms part of the site. There's also an access along the side of this fence line, which takes you to the front of the site. And a further view looking from the rear of the site from the street. So turning to the principle of the development. So this application, as noted, is seeking to upgrade an existing business, which will provide benefits to the local area in terms of the economy and the services it provides, meeting the overall requirements of the Council Development Plan policies. In terms of the key considerations of the proposals, members should note that various concerns and objections have been received from members of the public and also the Parish Council during the course of the planning application. These mainly relating to the impact of the proposals on the highway network, the design and scale of the scheme, and impacts on residential amenity. It's also noted that there's been some comments received in support of the proposals. In response to these, the application has been amended and comprises of the following key components, which I'll now run through in turn. So the first being access. So this is proposed off the Fakenham Road to the north and includes parking spaces on the site for deliveries and collections. So there's 4 parking spaces adjacent to the eastern boundary of the site, and a further 2 being located in front of the shop. Some concerns were raised regarding access to the site from the street and to the rear of the development. So this has resulted in us putting a condition, or recommending a condition, that all vehicles enter from the front, and this also applies to construction, traffic and management during the upgrade of the facilities. So the Highway Authority have also assessed the proposals and considered that the access arrangements are acceptable, given that the site already exists and has a well-established use. Furthermore, the applicant has confirmed that it's not the intention of the development to encourage AGVs to access the site, and no objections have been received by the Highway Authority in this regard. In terms of the waste collection points, so these are located approximately here on the side of the boundary and enclosed by a fence along the western boundary of the site. And so I'll now move on to some of the visualisations of the proposals. So this is a view of the existing and proposed street scene. So the scheme seeks to reuse the existing MOT garage and convert it into a new shop. So that's this building here, whilst demolishing the kiosk building. So the external appearance of the building will be updated with a new roof and painted brickwork to create a more modern appearance to the development. So with regard to the canopy itself, this is proposed to be replaced with a slightly higher and longer canopy of a relatively standard design seen on other garage forecourts. And this is to enable more modern full delivery trucks to access the site. Some lighting is also proposed, which is recommended to be conditions, requiring further details to be submitted prior to the use of the development, and to ensure regard is had to the level of light and any potential impacts on neighbour amenity. But having regard to this, officers have considered that the degree of change is acceptable, given that the canopy already exists and the replacement canopy would provide an improved outlook within the existing street scene. In addition, the extended canopy remains well within the site to provide cover for the additional pumps, and it is not considered to be out of place within the overall street scene. Turning now to some of the environmental considerations, in particular risk of contamination. The Environment Agency have been consulted on the application, and following amendments, which include confirmation that the old underground fuel tanks will be removed from the site, they have confirmed they have no objections, subject to various conditions to ensure that the development does not result in any unacceptable risk to contamination, both on and off the site, and to the River Wensum. Additionally, as the site is a petrol filling station, it is regulated by an environmental permit, which will be controlled by the Council's Environmental Quality Team. So, on balance, the proposed development is not considered to pose any environmental risks that cannot be controlled through suitably worded conditions as set out in your reports. So finally, in terms of the shop, it's noted that some concerns have been raised regarding the impact of the shop on existing businesses in the area. So whilst these are fully recognised, it's considered that given its modest size, and as there is no planning requirement to assess the impact of the proposed shop on existing services and facilities, it's considered that the proposals are acceptable in this regard. So to conclude, the proposals will upgrade and extend an existing filling station and MOT garage through the conversion to a new shop. So whilst some impacts have been identified, these have been suitably considered and mitigated by way of conditions. In addition, the design and appearance of the proposals are considered acceptable and will help to enhance the appearance and character of the existing site. Proposals will also provide small-scale employment opportunities, as well as offering a valuable service to the village. So the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions summarised in your report. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions for the officer, please? Councillor Hempsall.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask for clarification? Clearly, when this filling station was constructed, there was no restriction on what vehicles it would accommodate, and I guess it was just through the passage of time and the fact that it wasn't updated and modernised that HGVs became too large to fit under the canopy. So I don't quite understand why the rationale for no HGVs was entertained at any point in during the planning process and in the report.
GV accessed that. The Highway Authority also looked at that and commented on that aspect of the proposals. I think given the location of the site more generally, it's not likely that you'd see many HGVs using this site. So the canopy has been raised slightly by approximately 1 metre to accommodate essentially modern fuel delivery trucks, and it's not inconsistent with other canopies or small-scale petrol filling stations that you might see elsewhere.
I think my point was that if this filling station had been updated every 10 years or so to raise the canopy and ensure that HGVs could continue to use it, they would still freely be able to do so. It's just that from when it was first constructed to now, there seems to be a disparity in that height, which now appears to give licence in planning for a restriction on that use. That's what I'm seeking clarification for.
No, if I can just come in there. So there aren't any restrictions being proposed to be imposed. The officers have reviewed those elements because they have been raised by local residents in terms of concerns around the use of intensification of the site and use of HGVs. Therefore, those questions have been asked of the Highway Authority and considered in terms of amenity issues, but no restrictions are proposed to be imposed in that respect.
Okay, Councillor Leggett.
My press. That one. Yes, thank you, Chair. The Environmental Agency raised quite a lot of very, I think, serious points initially, and in the conclusion, and I think the officer mentioned that in addition, concerns were raised by the Environmental Agency under the previous application. These have now been suitably addressed with the conditions. Does that mean that you have agreed with the environmental agency, and have they agreed with you approval of the conditions covering all their concerns?
So the conditions are essentially pre-commencement or pre-use conditions, so the applicant would need to submit additional information in terms of validation and verification of the work they're doing to address those issues, in particular relating, one, to the removal of the underground tanks, which are currently on site, and although they also have to provide additional information in terms of any remediation work that they need to carry out on site, and that is subsequently validated. So that happens as a pre-commencement condition as part of any application.
I think just to clarify, that is what has been requested by the Environment Agency. So the Environment Agency have seen all of the information provided by the applicant, have assessed that amended information, and they have requested conditions be imposed to make this acceptable, which is obviously, we have due regard to that technical and statutory consultation in that respect.
Does that mean, yes, that the environmental agency are clear on what the conditions are proposed, and they're satisfied that that meets their concerns?
The Environment Agency have recommended the conditions themselves. They are their conditions. As I say, no development can commence until information is submitted to the Environment Agency to validate what is required as part of those conditions.
Chairman, I think the sound for me is improving a bit. I can certainly hear you very clearly, but I wonder if I could ask other people to speak a little closer into their microphones, because, you know, I do have this challenge. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Point of clarification, if I may, please, and that's about the canopy. I know throughout the report there's concerns raised about the raising of the canopy, and I think in your presentation you said it would be raised marginally. Could you clarify by how much? And also, I noticed there's a condition about the canopy and lighting, and it's understanding what lighting would be deemed appropriate and sensitive. Thank you.
Yep, so in terms of the canopy, so the height is raising by 1 metre, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah, so approximately 1 metre. So there's a fascia element to it, which you can see in the dark grey. That is 0.8 metres from memory, but the top of it would be 1 metre higher than what is there currently. So it's not a significant raise in height, but there is obviously an element of change. So turning to the lighting, so I think one point to note, there's already lighting on the site now, but there'd be some additional lighting in terms of the totem pole that would obviously display the garage facilities, and potentially on the top of the canopy as well. But to ensure that we're satisfied with that in terms of any potential impact on residential amenity, we're requesting that the applicant submits additional details of that to us, which we would review to ensure that the level of illuminance isn't significant or has any detrimental impacts in terms of general residential amenity. And there's also operating restrictions in terms of the use of the garage as well, so lighting would theoretically be controlled under that also.
It is noted on 5.11 that the height is similar to the height of the former MOT garage, so I think it's slightly underneath the pitch of the roof, which is about 5-6 metres high. Okay. Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. It's my experience that where a garage has MOT facilities, a number of cars gradually accumulate, and so my concern is it already running as an MOT garage, and if so, or if not, then can the number of cars allowed to be kept on site be a condition to save problems that over a period of time the number of cars builds up on a similar site?
Yeah, I think just to clarify, in terms of the current use and the MOT garage, that would cease to exist and it would be turned into a shop. So that use would no longer be there as part of the proposal. So there's parking proposed in front of the garage. There's also a hard standing, which I showed you on the photos, and that's where staff car parking is proposed to be located for the site. So that would be controlled by virtue of the number of spaces provided on the site.
Thank you.
Councillor Lamming.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I do understand that the Environment Agency has looked at this in great detail, but I just wondered about groundwater runoff, particularly following increasingly heavy rainfall events. The water could be contaminated, and I just wondered, is that going to be addressed as part of the full scheme of approval that will be needed before this might go ahead?
It would. There's fairly strict controls, as you'd imagine, on uses like this, and there are things like what they call fuel traps and various things to ensure that there's no additional runoff from the site into the surrounding water network. So that would be something that's controlled and looked at very carefully in terms of those conditions recommended by the Environment Agency.
Are there any other questions before we go on to public speaking? No? Okay, I would like to invite Petter Banks. Would you like to come forward, please? And over here, please. You have 5 minutes, and the officer will give you a warning at 1 minute left. Okay, thank you. 5 minutes from when you start.
Yep, so Peter Banks, Parish Councillor for Great Witchingham. Firstly, thank you for the detail in the report. It provided quite a helpful contextual overview. The parish's concerns were primarily in 3 major areas. Number 1, environmental, and I will need to place our assurance in the experts at the Environmental Agency that they've considered those matters and will suitably mitigate any risk. Water runoff, removal of the tanks, all of these are things that we believe could potentially impact both the Wenson but also the immediate residential neighbours as well. Second area of concern is around the additional retail development. I know we've got someone speaking shortly on that, but it will provide competition to some of our local businesses that isn't there today, and that is a concern to local businesses, alongside the increased hours of operation to the existing retail unit that's on site, which again will then kind of lead into our primary concern at the moment, which is around residential impact. So that covers a few areas, and I know we've touched on some of that today, but the immediate neighbours will undoubtedly suffer from the increased canopy, the increased opening hours, both from a noise and a light pollution perspective. And I'd like to be quite clear around what that noise assessment, the lighting assessment, and also the impact of waste collection and deliveries will be on those individuals. I'm not quite clear on how that, even though there was a question earlier, on how that will be kind of approved and reviewed, and if they will be consulted in that process. I am also quite concerned about customer parking, which, although there is some provision on site, we don't believe will be adequate to the size of the retail unit in place, which we think will attract people independently to the petrol station. I can see that there's been changes in the application around accessing of the streets, which is very narrow and already under significant pressure. But I'd like to be really clear around what happens if customers start going around the back to park, what happens if customers start parking on the verge on the main road, which we believe they will, and whether there's any mitigation that could be included to prevent that. And that summarises the comments from Council.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions for the Speaker? Councillor Vincent.
Thank you. And understanding the impact on the local businesses, are you able to explain the opening hours at the moment? Obviously, the opening hours of this facility is looking to be 6 till 10. What are the opening hours of the local businesses, please?
The Lenwade News, which the representative will be speaking shortly, which is open most days of the week, but not to the hours of this. You've then got a butcher's, you've got a bakery, we've got a fish and chip shop. So small businesses that open kind of 9 to 5 and not on a Wednesday. So you'd expect this to take some business.
Can I just for members' reference, so competition is not a planning material consideration. Where retail is a consideration is where that may affect the vitality and viability of existing centres. So your assessment, the assessment in the report sets out where this is necessary. It's not necessary in this case because of the limited scale of the retail element that your National Planning Policy Framework advises. You don't have to consider those impact assessments on vitality and viability. It's not about independent operators of existing businesses. It's about the functioning and the draw coming from those existing centres. So I just want to clarify that it's not material in terms of that direct competition.
Councillor Vincent.
Yeah, thanks very much. I was aware of that. I just wanted to understand a bit more about the local situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution. If I could ask Mr. Mateusz Kasika to come to the front, please. Mr. Kasika, you also have 5 minutes to speak from when you start.
That one? Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Mateusz Kasica, and myself and the wife, we are actually owners of Landway News. I've already raised my objections on the emails previously, but I would just like to say that we opened the shop 11 days before the pandemic, and ever since we try to continue improve everything we do, including providing jobs for people from local area. In fact, we currently employ 2 people from Landway. We continue to improving the site as well, such as resurfacing the whole area of car park, etc. And I'm just here to say that I believe that converting the garage into a big shop, it's basically gonna put the lock on our door. Simple as that. And we see it as a huge competition, and it's not going to. It already put stops on many things we were planning to do going forward, because obviously of the future, what's going to happen in the future. And I would like to mention also about the raising heights of the canopy on a petrol station, because I am also happen to be an owner of a petrol station in a different location. And although that in the planning it says that it's nothing to do with attracting AGVs, etc., and it's about the modern AGVs, the modern AGVs, which especially in this instance supplies petrol, for the safety assurances are actually designed to be a lot lower than they have been before. As far as I'm concerned, the only reason why the canopy need to be raised is to actually allow the heavy AGVs plus all the agriculture's machines, etc., which will create the chaos. But that's all I want to say on that, because obviously I've got slight experience in that field as well. But I'm here mainly to say that it's going to have a huge impact on our shop, and considering we've been working on it for last 3 years, and we are just now pretty much coming on a straight line after the pandemics and everything, facing opening of another big shop, it's pretty much saying goodbye to us. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hemsel, you have a question?
Right now. Okay, good. I just have a question of clarification. I'm not sure who this should land with, but our public speaker mentioned agricultural vehicles. Was this petrol station going to stock red diesel? Because I didn't think that was allowed for agricultural vehicles who are permitted to use red diesel.
Red diesel is generally speaking completely not allowed now, including agricultural vehicles, so they are all have to use the general public accessible normal diesel as such. So the red diesel, usage of red diesel in commercial machineries and agriculture has been put to stop, as I don't want to guess, but probably about 6 months ago.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gaskin.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, really. I mean, the intention of the filling station is not necessarily to serve HGVs, and particularly definitely not agricultural vehicles. You probably see that from the scale of what's being proposed on the site plan. Notwithstanding that, as I said, the Highway Authority have reviewed it in that respect as well, have not objected to the proposals, which I think is a key point. More generally speaking, given the location of the petrol filling station, it's not really on an HGV route, so whilst you might have some occasional HGV use, it's not going to be something that is intensive. But like I said before, there's no restrictions on that proposed as part of the planning application, and nor would it be considered reasonable to impose those types of restrictions.
Thank you. Councillor Catchpole, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, again, quite concerned about the parking spaces that are on the street, having delivered many a leaflet down there. I know how tiny it is. Can it be a condition that they're only used for staff cars, perhaps, so there's no coming and going down the street?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they are certainly intended to be used by staff only. There isn't a restrictive condition on it. We did ask the Highway Authority if that was something that would be reasonable to request, and they considered it wouldn't in this case. But as I said, most of the traffic is intended to be from the Fakenham Road, and that's the front of the shop facing the principal highway as well. And presumably, if staff are using those spaces to the rear, there wouldn't then be an opportunity for other people to necessarily be parking there.
A point of order, are we not still on questions to the Speaker? Or have we moved on and I missed a beat?
No, I mean, the Speaker is welcome to go back to the seat now.
Is that okay if I say thank you very much and leave the meeting because I've got other commitments
Certainly,
for the day?
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks very much.
I think if you look at the parking spaces, they're at the back. I don't know if there will be access, if members of the public parked around the back, if there'll be access to the front of the shop, or it's just, if it's staff, they'll go into a back door. Is there access?
Chairman, could you open it up for discussion if that's the conversation we're having now? But I don't think we've reached that point on the agenda yet.
I was just replying to Councillor Catchpole. We'll go on for the next speaker. We have Councillor Ballman. Would you like to come forward, Councillor Ballman? You have 5 minutes.
We're in business. Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to attend this morning. My presentation, no slides, will fall into two parts. Firstly, I would like to note the improvements that have been recognised since this application was first put in. The cynic in me might suggest, well, like most applicants, they put in for more than they ask for, and then accept something less. But of course, I'm a cynic, so I couldn't possibly comment about what you might think. It is noted as an improvement that the tanks are actually going to be replaced. Frankly, if I were in the vicinity, I certainly wouldn't have wanted to use those old tanks. I'm sure they're well past their sell-by date. They probably might already be an environmental problem. Certainly, if they'd been there ongoing, they would have been an environmental problem. I am concerned, however, about their removal to make sure that the Wensum Valley and the river, which of course is a place of great scientific interest, is preserved, because God forbid if any contamination actually got in there. I'm also delighted to notice that the car wash has gone, and also the main food outlet that was proposed. So those are all positives. Now for the negatives. I am surprised, to say the least, that a site of this complexity and this importance to the local residents, that the planning committee has not conducted a site visit. Frankly, pictures, photographs, maps do not do justice to this actual application. You need to be there, you need to see it, you need to understand what the impact is going to be on the residents. Believe you me, if you lived next door, you would consider this to be a major intrusion to your everyday living. So the lack of a site visit, to me, makes this application, to be honest, flawed. And I would like the committee to actually consider not reaching a decision before a site visit is undertaken, where everything can be explained in detail and you can see it for yourself. Contamination still remains a concern for me, certainly during the construction period. How are the tanks going to be removed safely without actually impacting on the environment, and particularly the river? We need to understand the impact on the locals. This is a major change. Let's not beat around the bush. The company, notable for their absence this morning, wouldn't have actually put this application in unless they were looking for a substantial increase in business, either from people going to use a shop or from people using the fuel station. And let's be honest, why are they raising the canopy? Purely and simply to allow HGVs to use it. Already, the filling is undertaken by tankers, which manage to get underneath the canopy without any difficulty whatsoever. So the only rationale for raising the canopy, in my view, is that they want to encourage the use of HGVs. It is a major route. Let's be honest, it is a major route. HGVs do use it, and the more this facility is available to them, the more they will use it. So the building works themselves are going to be very disruptive for the residents. I don't know quite how long it's proposed they will take, but they will actually impact on the residents to a very significant degree. And I don't see how in this application any real consideration has been given to that. I'm concerned about access and egress, increased usage of the site, and that's clearly, only 1 minute? I'll try and summarise. Access and egress is going to be an issue, so therefore I do want to be assured that this will be carefully controlled, because I don't think it will be. And of course, if the shop is there, that will also encourage much more usage than is the case. So I don't think any of those issues have really been given full consideration, and the lack of a site visit, in my view, is a serious flaw. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. Any questions for Councillor Baldwin, please?
Surely some.
Anybody? Councillor Leggett.
I would just like to support what Councillor Baldwin said, because I found trying to read all this without having, visualised it, and I know the road, but I haven't actually looked at it in this context. And I would certainly support and agree with what he said about a site visit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Leggett.
Can I just say it is open for councillors to go and visit the site beforehand if they wish to. I haven't actually seen the site, and you are very welcome to go and see it.
Madam Chairman, if I may, visiting the site and actually conducting a site visit with officers who are actually explaining it are not the same thing. Sorry, Madam Chairman, for interrupting you.
Thank you for your apology. You may go back to your seat. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Vincent, sorry.
Was what Councillor Bullman has just said, having a site visit with officers explaining and pointing out would be beneficial, I feel, in this instance.
Okay, thank you. Does any of the officers want to respond to that?
Just to reiterate, in terms of, it's obviously, if in advance of committee, if members feel that they don't understand from the report in front of them, obviously it's open for them to visit the site to understand that. In terms of the reason to refer for a site visit, that's obviously open to committee to take a vote on that if you feel that you need to understand the context of the site to make that decision. I think I've heard a planning reason from Councillor Vincent for that rationale.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bullman, would you like to return to your seat, please? Thank you. I'd like to open it up for discussion. Oh, Councillor Brim.
Sorry, just before we go to discussion, Councillor Leggett is having difficulty still hearing certain speakers. I struggled with the last piece that Josie read, sent to us. Can you bring the microphones closer to the individual? I think this seems to be the problem, that the microphone is too far away, and as I move back, you see the problem. If I come here, I think you can hear me extremely clearly. So please, can you bring your microphones closer for everybody's benefit? Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Nigel, do you want me to repeat that? Or
That would be nice.
yeah, of course.
Councillor Leggett and myself as well.
Apologies, I have brought it closer. I'm sure I'm breaking some rules in terms of moving it, but in terms of whether or not you feel you need a site visit, I was just reiterating the Chair's point in terms of, you know, if you are concerned around understanding the context of a site before it's reported to committee, that is open to you to visit the site in advance. So I just want to note that, so that you are able to visit the site. Obviously noting members' comments around a site visit. If you wish to vote to defer to a site visit, that's obviously in your gift to do so. And I have had a planning reason from Councillor Vincent in terms of why you would want to visit the site. So that's obviously for the Chair to put to vote if necessary.
Okay, can we open up to discussion? Does anyone would like to make a comment? Councillor Hempsall.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just, I guess my point on the application is that it's a bold move, bearing in mind that, you know, we are phasing out diesel engines in the not too distant future. So yeah, I was surprised to see this application in, to be perfectly honest. I guess they must have their financial reasons to want to do it. But I guess that's my discussion point. I mean, otherwise, you know, on paper, it just looks like expanding or modernising an existing use. But I do take on board what Councillor Bullman said in terms of, you know, needing a site visit, because on paper, it looks straightforward. But as a local resident and local representative, I take on board his comments that this really needs a site visit.
Anybody else? Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this has been a garage site for a very long time. And there's two things that have come into my mind. One is there any proposed housing development in the area with planning permission or in the Greater Norwich Plan, which would increase the number of local residents who would be potentially customers of these various retail outlets. So that was one thing. Can't remember my second point. I'll come back to it. Thank you.
Response?
Yeah, I'll just pick up that point. I think in terms of, you do have to think about the materiality of that. So obviously it's an existing service and facility for the existing community. Obviously the retention of that and the expansion of that, and it clearly is functioning for the existing services and facilities for the existing community, as well as obviously passers-by. In terms of what's being proposed through Lenwade, I would have to, apologies, I would have to double check in terms of what is being proposed through the Greater Norwich Local Plan. I've got a previous version. I'm not sure when any of those were brought forward, but it would be in a scale of around 20 dwellings if that was to come forward in Lenwade in terms of the scale of growth for those types of settlements.
Okay, thanks. So not big numbers then. And also, if this was to close down completely as a site for sale of fuel, given the environmental contamination that is likely to already be there from the years past, what else could it be? How difficult would it be to change the use of this site going forward?
I'm not sure that's material to your decision today. So obviously what you've got in front of you today is whether or not it's acceptable in planning terms for the changes to the existing site, whether there are opportunities or whether the applicant will want to do something else on site should this not be forthcoming isn't material to your decision.
Councillor Lamming.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I do think this was quite a complicated picking up, yeah, to balance. And I recognise there are a lot of concerns. I mean, we see a lot of public responses to the consultation with 27 objections and also a large number of conditions for the site. We've got 21 conditions, so that does indicate there are complicated issues here. But I did have questions for the officers yesterday about traffic, contamination of the site, groundwater runoff, use of renewables, and I have been satisfied with the replies that I received. The difficulty is, in support of this application, we've got a proposal to upgrade a station that already exists. It's already a facility in the area that's needed, and it is within the development boundary, so it does meet policies, GC1 and GC2, and it does as well meet policies in the MPPF that ensures that established shops, facilities and services can develop and modernise. It meets the policy as well to develop and use brownfield land effectively. But then we've got issues against the application, so possible concerns about environmental pollution, highways and impact on the amenity of the area. It's a difficult one because highways concerns, we've got a policy that says development should only be prevented on highways grounds if there is an unacceptable impact on highways safety, and the Highways Authority haven't raised any concerns. We have got a lot of mitigation in terms of providing off-street parking for the staff, and it seems that there are plans in place for accessing the site and exiting it, even though we recognise there might be more traffic due to the shop and the layout changing. There are a lot of mitigations, it seems, in place to address neighbouring amenity concerns, lighting, noise, disruption, construction and waste collection. So again, I recognise that they are all really valid concerns from neighbours, but it's if the conditions are put in place and adhered to, that should be controlled adequately. And the big thing for me was environmental concerns. I mean, the River Wensum is a really important river in terms of environmental interest. I mean, it's mentioned in the nutrient neutrality report that came out recently as being a really good example of a lowland calcareous river in the world due to the diversity of its flora and fauna. So it is absolutely crucial, I think, that mitigation is put in place to prevent pollution to the river. So I recognise those concerns, but it's hard to see that if everything in the report is controlled and put in place, it's hard to see that there's clear material considerations to reject the application.
Thank you. I would concur with Councillor Lamming's summary of that. Do we have Councillor Vincent? Sorry.
Summing up that you've done, Councillor Lemon, and I appreciate that. I remain with my position that I'm concerned of the impact on the residential amenity. And for me personally, to be able to determine this application, I would like to visit the site first, and I propose that we do that.
Okay, we'll take a vote to determine if we have a site visit. Councillor Benson, do you have a seconder for that vote? Councillor Lamming? Yeah? Okay. All those in favour of a site... Exactly. Yes. All those in favour of having a site visit, please. That's 6, yeah. Okay. No, nobody against. No. Okay, well, we'll arrange that with the officers.
So yeah, just to confirm, the current process is that that's on the same day as the committee, so we'll obviously get that in motion for you.
Thank you. Okay, well, that concludes the planning meeting for today. I would like to make one apology. I forgot to approve the minutes from last time with my enthusiasm to get this done. So if we could have a vote just to approve the minutes of the last meeting, please. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution today.